League and places like that. And I don't know where to start. This has been this was a bad session.
Is it over?
It's not quite over yet, but we're still in the third special session. We're actually supposed to be in Austin today, but it was just to check in, and I'm not driving 5 hours just to check in. But it's basically there's a few days left in the third call special session. Pretty much everything that's going to be done is done. Vouchers pretty much is effectively dead.
How about raises? How about more education?
There's no raises for teachers. There's no funding for kids in schools, which is something that we've talked about for a long time. And I know Abbott went out on TV and everything else saying, "Oh, we worked out a compromise," and we're like, "Well, the people who oppose you have not. We haven't talked to you at all, so I don't know who you're going to compromise with." So whether that's Democrats or whether that's rural Republicans, like even the rural Republicans are like, nobody's going to talk to us. I mean, I don't know what kind of compromise he's talking about, but look, and I said, like, look, everybody who is in the know on the voucher issue has said, like, we don't know what he's talking about. Like, nobody's come talk to us. And you know, my frustration with this is like dealing with Abbott is just like everything that he does, he's either a political stunt or he just like tries to get his way by strong arming and threatening people. It's like those are not ineffective tools in a politician's tool chest, but those shouldn't be your only tools. Like, and that's effectively the only thing he knows how to do is be a bully or just make stuff up. And both are kind of bad, right? And you know, I think I told my story about like the Rick Perry like last time I was here, but like, you know, like when I first started, the first time I got elected in my first legislation, we had a big thing, and Perry needed Democrat support, and instead of like just talking about us on TV and then trashing us, he just said, you know, screw it, I'm gonna come down and meet with the Democrats, and basically he met with us behind closed doors and said, like, look, I know what you want. I'll help you get what you want. You can help me get what I want, and what I want benefits everyone. Okay? And we're like, okay, that's fair trade. We'll trade you education money for rural communities to do water projects. Fair trade, right? And that's exactly what he did. And instead of just getting $1 billion back from the 2011 cuts of $5.4 billion, we got like $4.5 billion. Current education, not everything we wanted, but a whole lot better than the $1 billion that they were offering in the beginning, right? And then in return, Democrats ended up voting for the SWIP funds from the rainy day funds, and rural communities got taken care of. That's how you lead, right? You can talk all the bullshit you want on TV and on the campaign trail, but when it comes to actually getting stuff done that the people of the state of Texas need, you put your ego aside. You put all the nonsense aside, and you say like, "Hey, let's talk. Let's have a beer. Let's have a whiskey. Whatever your preference is, and let's work something out." Right? And things can always be worked out. And here's the thing: like when I first came into the legislature, the Republicans had close to a supermajority. They had a supermajority in 2011, right? And that's when they slashed education, they slashed healthcare, they slashed all these things because they could. Because why not? Because public policy is hilarious, and when people lose their health care, when kids don't get educated, when teachers get fired, it's hilarious, right? So, but that's you know, fun games. But still, we can come back together and say, like, look, there's a lot of things we disagree on, but let's work on the things we can agree on. And taking care of education was one of them. Taking care of rural communities and water infrastructure was another thing. It doesn't have to be this way, right? It's this way because of leadership, right? Or the lack thereof, right? And people always act like, well, obviously a governor, by the time you get to that office, is going to be a great leader. No, not really. there are things you can learn and there's things you can't learn. You know, and there's a comment that's made about Ted Cruz today. You know, talking about how, you know, Colin Allred and some of my colleagues are running against him, but Colin Allred, and I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm sorry, I want to make that clear. I'm not endorsing anybody. I've talked to everybody who's running, and I've said, like, my courtesy to you is I won't endorse anyone. Right? I'm not going to endorse you or all my other friends who are also running. But, you know, their comment was like, you know, by calling somebody who in Congress, when there's a problem, he says, okay, what's the problem? How do we fix it? Let's get going. Right? And then Ted Cruz just takes the problem and said, there's a huge problem here. Well, what's your solution? I don't know, but there's a huge problem here. And he just goes around and says, there's a huge problem here. And we're like, that's fantastic. What are you going to do about it? Right? And this has been like the theme of this last legislative session. This has been the theme of Congress under Republican control. And it's all a bunch of stuff that they have made up and made themselves afraid of it, and now they have to do something about it, about a non-existent situation. Book bans, right? What? Look, I get people get really anxious about sex because, you know, God forbid, kids who are already going through puberty, like learn something about their own bodies and learn something about sex, and then don't become teenage parents and all these other things, right? Because they certainly are going to learn about sex on TV, on movies, on the internet, in books, magazines, and from their friends.
And from their parents.
From their parents, they're certainly not going to learn. And I'm like, and this is just side note. My personal, especially since I've become a parent, like my anger is like, look, y'all MFs spend so much time worrying about sex, right? But ain't nobody, because of sex, went and shot up 19 kids and killed 2 teachers, right? Yeah. Like learning about sex, learning about whatever you find offensive, that knowledge has never caused anyone to be shot in the head. But we know a lot of school kids have been shot in the head, right? And you refuse to do something about that. And it's like, I said, we care about kids. Like, you don't. I'm sorry.
We feel you.
Right?
We feel your pain.
That's really frustrating when people tell you what this is what I'm really about. No, it's not. Your actions completely are contrary to what you say. So let me. This is going on a long tangent, but this last legislative session should have been one where all Texans should have gotten together and celebrated, right? Because we had the largest surplus in Texas history, not only largest for Texas, but largest in the United States. Like no other state has ever had this kind of surplus, right? And so, but before I talk about the surplus, let's talk about clearly where did this surplus come from, right? Surplus came from us, right? So this surplus is not. There's some oil and gas. That's some of the surplus comes from oil and gas, but not most of it. The bulk of it came from sales taxes, right? And the sales taxes is because the federal government put like about $3 trillion into our pockets, right? Some of it went to us. A lot of it went to people who falsified their PPP loans, right? Got millions for doing nothing, all right? And so when we got that money and we had nothing else to do, we bought things, we took care of our needs, we paid rent, we did all these things, and eventually all that sales, all that extra churn, all that sales money went into the state's coffers. And that's important because that surplus was generated out of your pocket. It wasn't magic money that just came out of nowhere. That money belonged to you and then was taken up as sales taxes. You paid extra in sales taxes when you went to purchase stuff, right? So you took a little bit of a pain. So now we have this giant, including the rainy day fund, including some of the other dedicated funds that had surpluses in it. We were looking at almost $50 billion, right? Ridiculous, a ridiculous amount of money. And this was an opportunity, right? And one of the things you don't want to do with surpluses, especially if you think they're one-time surpluses, and this one likely is to be a one-time. We may still get a slight surplus next session, but not nearly as big, and it'll start petering out because the money from the COVID times it's gonna keep cycling itself through the economic system, but over time it's gonna peter itself out. So one thing you don't want to do is put a lot of money into reoccurring costs. Right? So that means that your budget is great this year, you spend a lot of money, and then next cycle you have the same need, but then the revenue isn't there. You want to be careful about that. And so you want to look for a lot of things. You think that your money that this bonus is one time, you look for a lot of things that are just one-time costs. Two of the biggest one-time costs that we've been dealing with are teachers' retirement and state employees' retirement. These are pension funds. These require a certain amount of cash in them, right, to be invested initially so that their rate of return matches the growth in the account system, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, in every single session, I sit on appropriations. They will come to the appropriators and say, well, the teacher's retirement account and the state employees retirement account is short, right? Because the rate of retirement is growing faster than the new people coming in, and therefore the amount of money we're supplying is not going to cover it. So, in every session we say, well, you need to invest about $3 billion one time. If you do that, $3 billion or $4 billion one time, then you don't have to worry about it for the next 20 years, unless something weird happens, right?
Right.
And every single session, what do? We'll put like $1 billion, right? And then, even though it needs 3, we put $1 billion in, and we come back next session. Guess what happens next session? Next session, same people come, accountants come through and say, like, look, fantastic, you put in $1 billion last time. It wasn't enough, and because the time value of money, 2 years have passed, now you still owe $3 billion. Nothing's changed. And what do we do that session? We put $1 billion in and push it off to the next cycle, right? And so this was a time where we could have said, markets are good right now, good time, markets are a little bit low, good time to invest, good time to take a whole bunch, take that $3 billion you really need it, and shove it all in there. Whatever else you need there. It's a little bit more for state employees and stuff like that. That's what we should have done, right? They put a little bit more in, but not the whole amount, or all that they need, or put more than they needed to, because those are good. I mean, putting that money into teachers' retirement is not even spending. That's a savings account, right? So the whole point of it is to put money in, and the interest from that takes care of everything else. So we end up having a proposition on the ballot over and voted for the teachers' retirement, but we didn't really take care of the state employees' retirement, right? Which is whole another matter. They got some money in there, but not enough.
What's that called?
Texas State Employees Retirement System pension.
TS.
TRS. No, that's Teachers Retirement System. Sorry, I'm embarrassed. I don't know. I'll think of it when I'm not here.
Give us a call.
It's one of those days. Instead, what did we focus on? And so we had this massive surplus. The big things I want to say that we did not do, and it's because Republicans aren't dumb, and a lot of them want to do what's right and want to make sure the state's taken care of. We put a lot of money in a lot of different things, like what state employees got about a 3% raise, roughly. You can calculate how and there's no easy way to tell, because that's not how the budget works. So we traditionally don't put in like, hey, X amount of money is for raises. We don't do that. We just say like, here, your agency needed this much, X amount the last time. We're giving X plus 20%, right? And you go figure out raises and everything else. On the whole, state employees got on average a 3% raise, which is good because they haven't had a raise of any kind in a long time. But 3% doesn't even cover inflation, right? 3% does not cover inflation, and the state employees are like, on one hand, they're grateful they got something, but on the other hand, they're like, 3% doesn't even cover inflation, right? and they were already underfunded, underpaid long before this last session, long before COVID, long before all the wages went up, because everyone's retiring, all the boomers are retiring, and people are quitting or whatever else. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I think I mean, even CPS, and I just had this conversation a couple of days ago. CPS, even though we infused a ton of money, we put in a ton of money in 17. We put more money in CPS every single legislative session. But even still, among investigators, they have a nearly 50% turnover. Okay, and so if those of you who have run businesses before, 50% turnover is close to death, right? That's not a good situation, especially in an agency and in a position that requires a lot of wisdom and experience to make judgment about when there is abuse, when there's not abuse. You don't want a lot of turnover in those kind of positions, but you know, that's what it is. And so the other big thing that we did not do was we did not expand Medicaid, right? And this is something where, like, increasingly Texas is one of the last states in the nation to not expand Medicaid. And this has real ramifications for our population. It means higher medical costs because there's a large uninsured population that doesn't qualify for federal health, that doesn't qualify for Medicaid, and can't pay for insurance themselves. There's a million Texans that when they get hurt, when they get sick, when they get injured, they're going to be going to a hospital. Guess what? We're going to help pay for it because they're uninsured or vastly underinsured. And that's not good for them to have. And you guys, we've talked about this before, but you know that medical debt is the #1 reason Americans go into bankruptcy. Medical debt. It includes people with insurance, right? Because you can have insurance, but it may not be the best insurance, and you might have a $20,000 deductible, or a $20,000 copay that you can't, like, dude, I can't swing $500, much less 20 grand. I'm done, right? So, state after state, even Republican states that have expanded Medicaid have finally realized, oh yeah, this is actually a really good idea, right? This is really beneficial. This has helped drive down other costs. This is helping drive down unexpected medical costs and all these other things, and it's good for the state's bottom line. As we have said time and time again, Texas has continued to refuse to do it just purely out of spite. I mean, literally to spite Obama.
Yeah.
Who has not been in office in like 2 terms, or Hillary. And we're like, are you guys serious? The last thing, and probably the most important thing that we did not take care of, is education, right? The single largest item in the state's budget is public ed, right? And split among, and now, I want to be very clear about this. When we talk about education, I'm talking about primary education, not higher ed. Higher education came out great. Higher education came out fantastic this last legislative session, especially if you had a lot of representatives who went to your school, right? Like UT, A&M, they did gangbusters. They got everything they wanted and then some, because they have a lot of political power. But you know, as we have said repeatedly, TSU, Prairie View, historically black colleges, you know, had to beg and scrape, and they got more than they normally get, but not nearly as much as what other people got, right? And this is one of those things. Community colleges did a little better, but still not nearly to where we needed to be. I mean, we had the ability, this last legislative session, we could have put funds in, and we could have put a whole bunch of money that was in a surplus, put it into an investment account, and literally use that investment to say all community colleges are free now. We could have done that.
Wow.
We could have done that easily, right? We say, like, the state's now going to cover community college tuition costs easy. Well, we've had bills during the session to do that. It's not hard. It's not a big lift. It's not that expensive, and we could have done that, but we said, yeah. But especially, we did not put money into public education, right? When we're talking about teachers, paying teachers more, we're talking paying per student expenditures for classrooms, and you know, it's like people who always come to me and says, "Well, money never made anything better. You can't put more money into education." I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what industry on this planet? What industry, what business on this planet, when you say, like, if you're underfunded, you say, well, if I had more resources, I could hire more people, I could hire better people, I could provide more, have more equipment to use that could do my job better. Who says, like, oh yeah, that's never true? Why wouldn't it be true for education? Right? And so, you know, people say, like, well, some states, like DC is always like a paraded out example. See, DC spends the most per student of any place in America. Like they spend almost 20 grand per kid. It's like around here would be like private school tuition amounts. And they say their results aren't any better. Well, friend, DC is a very different demographic. Right. Their public school system is, you know, like is basically like my district. Like they're 99% free lunch. So like my district, because I represent a poor minority and immigrant district. My schools are all like 98, 99% free lunch. That means everyone is like on the very, very bottoms of the socioeconomic ladder. So is DC, right? And they made it a point to say, like, look, we need to, and this is a fight we've had a long time. It's like, look, kids around the state are not the same, right? If kids come from poor communities, they have to deal with gang violence, they have to deal with homelessness, they have to deal with food insecurity, they have to deal with trauma from being in an abusive home, whatever it is. Those kids have different requirements than kids that came from nice, middle class, suburban neighborhoods. It doesn't matter about race. It matters about what resources you had access to. Right? And so, anyways, we had this big fight, and you know, one of the big things was like throughout this process of when we voted out the budget, there's a lot of Democrats, including myself, who were very torn about whether we should vote for this budget or not, right? Because of the things that we just talked about, but mainly because of the missing education component, right? The Charles Butts Foundation is Mr. Charles Butts, who one of the brothers who owns HEB, right? That's the B in Butts. You didn't know that.
I knew it.
And they did a study. The Butts Foundation did a study last year, surveyed like 4,000 teachers or whatever it was, and basically 70% of public school teachers are currently looking for other employment right now. Right. Whether they'll tell their school or not, they're actively looking, right? And a lot of what they say, and he goes, oh, you just talk about pay. The teachers don't really care about pay. I'm like, what? And then the survey, number one issue. Guess what the number one issue is? Pay, right? Compensation. Like the number one, number two, number three things are pay, compensation, and then benefits. Like it's all the same thing, right? And there's and in like a distant fourth, there's like, well, we don't like being micromanaged by the legislature. We don't like being told how to teach.
That's a big one,
right?
You don't want to go to work.
Yeah, I mean it's miserable because if you tell like you put like a rainbow sticker in your classroom, you're in trouble, you know, or you know if you talk about like that person is gay and they you know they're married to, and then now you're in trouble again or whatever.
Or a son.
Or you're talking about race, or you're talking about slavery, or you're talking about whatever, civil rights movement, and all of a sudden you can't talk about any of those things, right? And
when it hurt those feelings, little white kids got feelings, we can't hurt them.
So, like right now, you know, we talked about this during this last special session as they're trying to pass vouchers, because they're like, look, before we even have a discussion on vouchers, you have a discussion on education. People say, like, well, we want kids to go to private school because private schools are better. Well, I mean, like, no shit, they might be better, but it's because they get like $30,000, $20,000 a kid.
Right.
And also they can pick and choose.
They can pick and choose who they want. And they don't have to take kids with learning disabilities, they don't have to take kids with behavioral problems, they don't have to take kids with mental health issues, they don't have kids, they don't have to take kids who are food insecure, they don't have to take kids who have abusive homes.
Or the testing that goes on.
Or the testing.
They
I mean, they don't, they sure as hell don't want the testing.
No certified teachers either.
So, and they don't, but here's, I mean, the most basic thing is, look, Texas teachers are some of the worst paid in the nation. This is like far none. I mean, we're like almost like $6 grand below the national average, right? And this is adjusted for inflation, adjusted for region and everything else. Texas students, we're funded, the way we fund education funding per student, right? The per student funding from the state of Texas that our students get is ranked 43rd in the nation. 43rd. That's bottom, not top. Right? 43rd in the nation for per student funding. Right? How much money does each student get to spend on education? And in order for Texas to reach average, what the rest of the states in the nation are on average are spending per student, it will require another $43 billion. Okay? That's how short funded our schools have been. 43 billion. This is already, that's on top of the money that we put in 2019 after the Republicans took a wipe. After 18, next to better. And right, then we've already put extra. Think about how much less funded it was before we did that.
Right.
Right. So this is like the atmosphere that we go into this special session of. Like the Republicans are, well, we want to do other things, and we want to do vouchers. Like, okay, and what? Like, what do you do for us? Right? You already screwed us on every single thing. Like all these priorities, healthcare, education, like retirement system, all these things, one by one. It's like, yeah, we're gonna do what we want. You're not gonna do what you want, right? We had asked for not only we had asked for a significant pay raise for the teachers. Not only did we not get a significant one, didn't get one at all.
Right.
And we're like, so we're coming in this special session of, what do you have to offer us? You've given us nothing, and now you want us to help you? Like, that's stupid. Why? Why would we actively help you make our schools worse? And this is the my rage level of, like, you have actively over the past 2 decades continuously found ways to make public education worse. Now you're coming to us and saying, well, public education is terrible. Well, of course it is. You made sure of it. Right? And so so you want to not only not provide enough money for public education, but now you want to take even more money out to give $8,000 or $10,000 per kid to wealthy families, including mine, who already have kids in private school. Why would you do that? Right? Like, look, if they pass a bill, they put in the money. I'm going to take some of my money. I'm not going to say no. But right now, I'll tell you, I don't need it. I don't want it, and certainly not. I certainly don't want that money at the expense of public schools. Right? So. We're going to continue this fight. Abbott has said, I've heard that he has said that he's not going to call it forth. I'll believe it when I see it, right? But I think, this last week, I don't know if you guys saw, but like the Republicans were all in a little tizzy this week, even though we kicked them in the head a couple of times. For passing all their bills last week. We were there on the floor till 4 o'clock in the morning, mocking them and pointing out like all the stupid things in their bill.
Is that when Armando Wale?
Yeah. Oh, he was actually way earlier. He was like 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night, previous night, when he was about to lay somebody out. Anyways, that's where it is. I don't know, I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry. I'm happy to entertain questions. But this last legislative session was really bad. And I think a lot of the stuff we did was far beyond the pale, and it was too much. And I think a lot of voters are going to figure this out in 2024. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like what we need y'all for.
From your mouth to God's ear, right?
Yeah. So, it doesn't become real for people until it kind of hits them at home. And I think this voucher fight has really brought it home for a lot of people that, their deal. They put out these like surveys. The pro voucher side always puts out these surveys that say, oh, almost 50% of Texans support school vouchers. I'm like, well, number one, almost 50% is a really funny way of saying not the majority, right? And two, I have a master's in public policy. I took half of my degrees in stat. I know how to fudge a survey, right? And the surveys, I promise you, all the surveys basically say, they ask a question, hey, if the state gave you $10,000 for you to send your kid to private school, would that be great? And who's going to say no?
Right.
Everyone's saying, yeah, okay, sure, why not? But if they had asked, hey, we're going to give you $10,000 to send your kid to private school, and that money's going to come out of your public school. And it's going to hurt those public schools. And all the kids that are staying in those public schools will get screwed, right? And then you ask that question and ask those people, do you want that? Most people go, no, why would you want that? That's, like my family benefiting at the expense of all those other families? Most common sense people would say, no, that's terrible. Why would you do that? So anyways, any questions?
So my understanding is that a lot of the rural areas, which are Republican in Texas, don't want vouchers because they don't have any private schools to send their kids to. So why is Abbott, if a majority of Republicans in the state don't want vouchers, why is he pushing it?
This is an incredibly dumb fight for the Republicans, and I don't know why they're engaging in it, because it's actively stupid on their politically, right? So you have, and here's my calculus. Rural Texas is the Republican stronghold, right? Those are the reddest parts of the area, like 95% Trump voters, right? And then even the suburbs, which are bad, which I think are sometimes crazier, but their majorities are only like in the 60s and 70%, right? Because as we're speaking, suburban women, younger suburban voters, they're totally turned off by the Republicans now, right? And so, anyways, so you have a situation where the rural community is the heart of Republican power in the state of Texas. Period. No bar none. No other caveats. But at the same time, rural communities, if you don't work on the farm, if you don't work in whatever little shop you have, everybody else works for the county or works for the school district, right? The school district employs like 20% of the population, right? It's no joke because it's the biggest entity out there. The school district is probably bigger than the county government, right? So, and not only is it a source of employment, but the school is also the center of life.
Right.
It's the town square, like Friday Night Lights. I know we joke about Friday Night Lights right because we don't really have Friday Night Lights, but in the rural community, Friday Night Lights is a real thing. It's a real serious thing. That's what you do. Like you spend a hard week working. On Friday, you come bring the entire family, go watch the football game. You know, go buy some snacks, buy some t-shirts or hats, whatever it is. So, this whole fight makes no sense because you're essentially angering the people that support you the most. And I have an explanation, but it's going to sound conspiratorial, but I think it's true.
Let's hear it.
And it's not really even conspiracy. It's kind of like well known. Is look, Wilkes and Dunn, two billionaire oil billionaires from West Texas. They are the single biggest contributors to the Texas Republican Party, right? And they're single biggest contributor to Greg Abbott, to Dan Patrick, to half the Republicans in the legislature, right? And they are extremist libertarians. And I don't mean like the big L party libertarian, but a little L philosophical libertarian. They don't believe government should exist at all, right? And certainly, and unless it's for something that they want or need. So, what's the biggest part of government? Education, public education. And so, you know, it's not really even, you listen to some of the trolls and you listen when they talk about it. The goal isn't to make public education better. The goal isn't to provide a better education experience. The goal is to collapse the public school system. Right? Because they know that once you start taking money, as we have seen in other states, right? As we have seen in Arkansas. Arkansas just started their voucher program. 95% of their voucher recipients already had a kid in private school. Right? It's wealthy people just breaking in. In other states, the same thing, 90%, 85%, whatever it is. But the thing is, every time you take a kid out of public school and you take that money with them, that pulls out blocks from the Jenga tower, right? And you can only pull out so many before it goes. And this is what they want. They want it to fall over, because once it falls over, they can say, you know, it was a good effort, good try. Let's not do it again. Let's just, give everyone their tax money back, and then everyone get education on their own. Okay. So, anyways, I think that's their real goal.
Yeah, I think so.
They'll never say it publicly, but you can hear it in a lot of their talk. I hear in this discussion, I hear a lot of people shout at me, taxation is theft, right? What they're really after is that they don't want to pay for education. Period. Yes.
Okay, I don't disagree with you on this theory,
Okay.
but I do think that most of them are motivated by financial reasons, so someone's going to benefit financially from this.
I think
that's what I think.
The short-term gain. I mean, I can understand why Republicans want this. So look, a lot of Republicans send their kids to private school, right? Because they can afford it. They're wealthier, and it said if you can provide a huge tax incentive or tax break to Republican-leaning voters, why not?
Right.
Right?
And then they'll continue to support you and donate to you,
Exactly.
and okay,
So
it's a cycle.
yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, we get stuck on this budget thing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
What's your name?
Lisa.
Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, nice to see you. The 32 billion surplus,
Mm-hmm.
if we aren't spending it, if we, meaning our reps representing us, aren't spending it, do they tuck it away in a safe and don't touch it and not give it to their friends and do all that kind of stuff?
Theoretically, yes. I joke about that, but the state's piggy bank is weirder than you think.
Oh,
It's not a literal piggy bank.
oh,
It's actually a computer.
okay.
Like, I'm not kidding about that. There is
Okay, no, I believe it.
the money is essentially stored in digital format. It's not crypto, but essentially, the way it was explained to me was that essentially the state acts like its own bank. So it has a server that keeps we own this much cash. And it's a number that changes, and then the server has to get updated, but whatever that server says is the amount of money that the state has. And it issues, there's a whole, accounts payable department that pays from that, based on the amount. I don't know exactly how it's done, but, it would be difficult for people to screw with it. It is a lot of money, but it's difficult for people to screw with it because there's too many people watching, and there's too many safeguards that are involved.
Is there, in the next 2 years from now, that will still be there for us to possibly use
Yes.
for education?
Yes. So, and that's a fight, right? We've got about 30-something billion dollars left, and we have more money coming in, and we said, like, look, we're $40 billion short. If you want to, put it in that money and fill in the gap first, and then we can talk about vouchers. They're not going to do that, right? Because that would defy the plan of collapsing schools. Oh, and by the way, this hit me earlier on because and they keep saying that, oh, the money won't come out of public schools, the money won't come out of public schools. And it totally slipped my mind. They passed these voucher, the Senate passed over SB 1, which is the voucher bill. We didn't get a separate appropriations rider, right? There's no new pot of money that's gonna pay for these vouchers. You know what that means? But the money has to come from existing funds. If you don't have a new appropriations, right, that's new, a blank pocket of money that you can use to pay for this, it has to come from existing stuff. And so they keep saying, this won't defund existing schools, this won't defund existing schools. Yes, it will, because you didn't appropriate money for it, right?
Right.
And even if you did appropriate money, that's money that could have gone into the education system and taken care of a lot of problems. Anyways, sorry.
Now, there's a state prop for tax cut.
On the property tax, that's 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm sure most of y'all have voted already. Top 4 on this statewide proposition, that's the homestead exemption change. I'm conflicted on this because I think overall the homestead exemption change is very good because, again, that's something that Democrats have fought for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we finally got it now, which is changing, increasing your homestead exemption to $100,000. That means that if you own a $125,000 home and you're retired and everything else, you're only taxed for $25,000, right? For public education and other stuff, right? And so you get to they don't count the first 100,000. It's good, but there's 2 things I really didn't like about the legislation, and subsequently, which affects my thought on voting on the referendum itself, is 1, they gave the tax break to commercial properties as well, right? Which I'm like, why? Why do that? I mean, like, they're making record profits.
Commercial properties get homesteads?
No, not the homestead exemption, but just the compression that they would get, right? So it reduces the amount of money that they would be taxed on. Commercial properties are raising rents all over the place. People, if you live in an apartment, your rent's been raised, I promise you, right?
Right.
And the second thing is renters get nothing, right? And renters
They don't vote Republican.
They don't vote at all.
Yes. True.
So my district is 85% renters,
Yeah.
right? I'm the highest in the state, which is why I make a big fuss about this before. And the next closest district is in like the low 60s, right? So the vast majority of my residents are all in apartments and townhouses and everything else. They got nothing. And that's 40% of the state that got nothing. And they said, well, the property owners will give them a rent.
Last time the rent went down.
And I'm like, I want one of you to come to the front mic and say that with a straight face. You can't do it, can you? Right? Because even when I was like speaking out against this on the floor on my speech, I'm like looking at the members like, do you believe that landlords are? I know there's a bunch of landlords in the membership.
Right.
You're all going to commit to cutting rent? Crickets. Right? Right? And so we know it's not going to happen. So you know, for that reason, like, I think in the grand scheme of things, for most people, it's good for the proposition to pass, because the homestead exemption and some compression will be good. There's some bad stuff, is that I think it really ties the hands of school districts a lot. But the thing is, I voted against it, just as a statement vote.
And I voted against it.
Isn't that what you were talking about earlier? Was
Yes.
like said, if you ask the person, would you like $10,000 to send your child to a private school? Oh, yeah. But would you like to have that $10,000 if I take it away from this family?
Yeah.
Well, that's what that proposition
Yes.
is saying as far as I'm
Yeah, so again, what did I start with? I started out with, where does our surplus come from? It came from all of us. So if you're gonna say we're gonna give a rebate to all Texans and give some of your money back, shouldn't it actually go to all Texans? Right? And from a practical perspective, poor people pay a far larger percentage of their income
Right.
in sales taxes than rich people. There's only so many jacuzzis you can buy, right? Before, like, I can't buy any more jacuzzis. Or there's only so many Mercedes Benz you can buy. It's like, oh, I got 4 hours enough, right? But poor people, people have to pay for food, pay for clothing, pay for all these other things, fix your car every single day. And it's like the people who actually needed the money the most,
Right.
you left out. And you left them out because you don't feel like they have a voice and you don't care about their vote. Right? And that's what I'm hoping we change. And as we approach 2024, and this is my message to everybody, what we should be focused on, even if you're in a red area. Registration, get out the vote. Right? There's, especially in like this area, especially on the west side, especially in the suburban areas, tremendous growth, right? Over the Katy area, 30,000 new residents in like 4 years, right? And some of them are coming to California.
Yeah.
I don't want to break it to the Republicans, like I was always like, oh, this many New Yorkers and Californians moved to Texas. Like, buddy, I don't have to break it to you, but they vote Republican. Right? And we need to go find those people and find all the people who say like, I don't think a complete abortion ban without exceptions for victims of incest, rape, and severe genetic abnormalities should be denied. I think we should pass some gun control so that Texas is no longer the mass shooting capital of the United States. We should fund our education system. We should pay teachers what they're worth. We should have a healthcare system that doesn't leave people to die on the street. We need to go talk to those people. And everyone's, like, I always meet candidates and they're like, oh, that's a great point. I'm going to use that to argue against like this one voter that I know. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, why are you spending time trying to convince Republicans? Right?
Right.
You spend hours trying to convince them, and you're like, did you actually convince them? No. You don't know. Maybe not. Right? And in that time, in that hour that you spent talking to that one person, you could have gone out and got like 20 people to register to vote. Right? And those 20 people, because you just had a light conversation with them, you know that they support gun control, they support abortion rights, they support kids being able to learn about slavery and MLK. We don't have to worry about how they're going to vote, right? And this is getting registered, get them out the door. Don't spend time arguing with people and telling them why they're wrong.
Right.
All right? Go find people who are already on our side and already know that we're right, and let's get them out the door. We are in this situation. We are in the situation that we are at this very moment. I'm not talking about Texas. I'm talking about the entire United States. Right? Because too many people believe that what happens in D.C., what happens in Austin, does not affect them. And I try to tell people, like, because my vote doesn't matter. There is literally nothing. There is not a single damn thing in your life that is not affected of what happens in D.C. and Austin. Every single thing you do, from your job to how your family's looked after, to your health care, to your education system, to everything that you touch, everything that you can see is affected by our government. And if you say, I don't care, then you get exactly what you will deserve. Right? We get the government that we deserve.
All right.
And if we are apathetic, we are lazy, we are, I don't know what else to say. Then we deserve it. But I think we deserve better, right? I think we deserve an actual government that doesn't go out there and just spew things to drive up fear, right? And pass bills that are good showpieces but don't actually do anything. Time and time again, that's what it is. And right, we need people who actually take care of the budget, take care of funding the government, take care of schools, take care of hospitals, and just get stuff done. And we can go out there and tell people that and tell them, man, I hate to break it to you, but this is our state. And being our state requires all of us to participate and be a part of it, right? Because if you want to know what happens when you don't pay attention, just go look out there right now. This is the world we get when we don't pay attention. One where, all the rights that we have spent the last 50 to 100 years fighting for are getting rolled back, right? The old prejudices, the old hatreds that we thought were wiped out long, long ago are coming right back, right? We got people out there writing articles about how discrimination and segregation is good, right? We got people out there, talking about just letting poor people just die. It's okay. I'm like, is this a parody? Is this satire? Like, no, dude, it's serious.
Spending more on razor wire than
Yeah.
public education.
And yeah, speaking of that, look, this is, we have right now, if, and I know, SB 6 passed, that's the funding for the border wall. It's going to the governor's desk. And we're going to spend around $13 billion on the border. With what to show for it? Other than bodies floating in the river? Other than our state troopers and the reserve guard killing themselves out of depression for being stuck at the border with no end in sight, right? They can't take care of their families, they can't take care of themselves. What do you have to show for it? And they say, well, we busted, made a couple of fentanyl busts. Great. But most of the fentanyls comes through trucks and ships and airplanes, right? The bulk of it comes from over there. They come through actual legal ports of entry. They're not being, they say, oh, they're being carried by, migrants on backpacks. Like, well, one, like, I know that, immigrant migrants are pretty badass, because they've made it here like 4,000 or 5,000 miles barefoot, going through hostile territory with the threat of rape and death at any time. But I'm not sure how much drugs they can carry in a backpack compared to what's in an 18-wheeler, compared to what's in a cargo ship, right? And fentanyl's an important topic, and we should talk about it. We should talk about it with all the other drugs that we want to deal with. It's just extremely frustrating.
You mentioned last week Republicans were intending about.
Yeah. So this week, like, we were supposed to check in on Monday, and Monday was just like this. The state's law is, I can't remember if it's constitution or which are the rules, but basically we have to be in Austin like every three days or so by law, and we have to check in, and then we just gavel in, gavel out, right? And so, like Monday, after having this brutal floor fight on last week, Monday a whole bunch of people didn't show up. I didn't show up because I had to be in court. I had to do other stuff. My wife broke her leg, so I went from doing like 80% of the housework, doing 100% of the housework now. It's like that's not a big change. So, but anyways, and they didn't have quorum. And so they were mad, oh, Democrats are breaking quorum. Like, and Trey Martinez Fisher, our caucus chair, was like, I know that math is hard for y'all, obviously, but you know there are more Republicans missing than Democrats. Like, there's 20 Republicans missing. Like we were like 3 people short of quorum, and had any of those 20 Republicans shown up, the blank Democrats. And anyways, and so they're like, oh, Democrats are breaking quorum. And we're like, if we were breaking quorum, you would know. Don't tempt me. And so like they said like, well, we're gonna meet again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. You guys know it's Halloween, right? And we have kids. There is absolutely no way in hell that I'm gonna miss Halloween with my kids after being gone for 6 months. Right? And neither did anyone else. And they didn't have quorum again yesterday. I'm like, and so like they're now like the Republicans are on this tear, like Democrats are trying to kill vouchers. And we're like,
Damn right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not like this. And Democrats are like basically like, look, you're trying to play off the fact that you don't have the votes for vouchers, and you're trying to save yourself the embarrassment of having this bill die, right? And you're trying to blame it on Democrats, and Democrats are just looking around like, what do we do? And like, okay, you want to give us credit for killing your vouchers? We'll take it. So anyways, that's what, outside of the politicos and papers that cover politics in Austin, nobody really cares. It's just a big fluid about nothing. And this is when Abbott, so this is, I don't know what his play was. And I can't, I'm trying to process it in my head of why he would do it and what the advantage would be. But after on like Tuesday, like yesterday, after they didn't have quorum, Abbott amended his call for the special session, and it said, I'm down for putting more money into education in order to pass vouchers. And we're like, you're only like 26 days late. What, their May legislative session? And not to mention, and we're not even going to the fact of like, hey, whatever the tiny amount of money that you're offering is not remotely worth what you're trying to do. Okay? And we've had teachers come, and again, so I'm trying to go back up vouchers, but we've had teachers come to us like point blank and say, there's no amount of pay raise that is worth opening the door to vouchers, because if you open the door to vouchers, we may not have a job next year.
Right.
So what's the point of increasing my salary for 6 months when my school may have to close next year? Okay. So that's what and so Abbott like sent out a statement of, I've created a compromise with the legislature. And all of us reading about it, like I'm vice chair of the House Democrats, right? And Trey is the chair of the Democrats in the House. And we're like, well, I guess we're chopped liver. So if somebody made an agreement, somebody made a compromise, it didn't come back to us, right? And so I kind of checked out the feeds from like some of my Republican colleagues who are leaders in the anti-voucher movement, like on that side, and they're like, no one's come talk to me about a compromise. I mean, no one's talked to me at all. So I don't know how they can compromise. So everyone's like finally realizing after about like 2 or 3 hours, everyone's like, wait, if you're saying that you didn't agree anything and you're saying you didn't agree anything, that's everyone in the room.
Right.
Who did he talk to? And so like that kind of lie was just like exposed immediately. And this was one of those really bizarre Abbott moments where like, why would you make that claim if it's so easily disprove it? Why would you say you had a deal ready to go, but that claim would fall apart in like 8 seconds as soon as people looked?
Why did Trump lie about eating things like round sizes?
I don't. But
Power play.
in
They're
defense
not
of
bound
Abbott,
by reality.
he's not Trump.
But I was just.
Like Trump's a little, he's off his,
Is it Trump one?
like his marbles are completely spilled out, right? You may have a few of them left in there, but like I think Trump has officially lost his
But
mind.
they're the best marbles.
The very best marbles.
The shiny gold marbles.
But like for Abbott, it's just like, but that makes you look like a fool, right? Like why would you do something that actively makes you look like a fool?
He wants to make Democrats look like fools by saying, we had an agreement, but they backed off.
No, I mean, because Democrats would say like, because our response is easy, like, yeah, governors never talk to us. And this is what I'm talking about, when I'm telling the story about Perry, right? The point was that my first session, within the first 3 weeks of the legislative session, Perry said, hey, Democrats, can you meet? And can we work out a deal, right? In the decade that I've been under Abbott, he has never met with us one time, right? And if you want to talk about leadership, that's it. Right? And I think these are, we're the people actively thwarting your agenda. And you don't want to even come have a cup of coffee with us? Right? So, anyways, I think that's my cue of. Unless you guys have Abbott has said that he's not going to call a special session. I'm really hoping he sticks to that. But I don't know what's going to happen. He may not. Because he's also said that he would call specials until it was done. I'm like, okay, good.
Can you remind everybody how much it costs every time he calls it a special?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot. Every time we're in session, it costs a lot. I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not a tremendous amount of money compared to the whole budget, but it's not insignificant. It's like multiples of millions every week, right?
We can spend it on better things.
It is what it is. There's only so much I can do. So, I'm happy to come out anytime you guys need me.
Thank you so much.
All right, let me go back home and. Good night, y'all.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Take your candy packs out.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Door's broken. I think the door's broken. Okay, did it. Is everybody ready to go home and think of ways to get your neighbors to vote? Yeah? Okay. That's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna do some vote planning.